You know, historically, builders have had a bit of a love-hate relationship when it comes to pocket doors. You had to have a really top-notch finish carpenter to get it really working smooth and correct. If you had a service issue with the door, it's a major pain, and the frames can be a major hassle to get those assembled in the rough stage to get it all prepped for drywall. On the Build Show today, I've got the ultimate solution, the gold standard, all in one box. Today's video is sponsored by my friends at Cavity Slider. Let's get going. Okay, y'all, from a finished beautiful house to a remodel under construction, check out this set of doors. Isn't that beautiful? Soft close, soft open, and now instead of a standard pocket, this is actually a bi-parting pocketed door system. This is also from Cavity Slider. Now we've got 2x6s here instead of 2x4s, and we're using a fairly new product from them. This is the Cavity Slider Ultimate. Before I jump into this though, let me back up a quick second. You know, I learned about this company a couple years ago, and I used their product, their pocket door system, in my personal house. And I gotta say, the very first time I put the system together, a bunch of bells and whistles went off and said, wow, this really solves problems for me as a builder. You know, in the past, when I've got pocket doors, I would buy a track and a roller system separate, and I'd have the finish carpenter, during the rough stage of construction, make me a frame. Now, sometimes I would get a frame maybe assembled from a millwork company out of plywood, but most of the time we were making those frames on site, screwing that header, or pardon me, screwing that track into the header above, and kind of putting it together. I really had to have an expert pocket door finish carpenter, somebody who was really familiar and had done it a bunch to get all those details perfect. Now this system, on the other hand, comes in one box, and now everything just works together. It can be done by a normal finish carpenter. I don't need that person that specializes in pocket doors, let's say. And here's the heart of the system right here. It's this frame that you're seeing and the track that's all integrated. Now, compared to the site-built frame like I've done in the past, this is all aluminum. No big deal in terms of construction. I can still drill it, I can still screw it, I can cut this down. In fact, this particular opening, the carpenter's cut down by 1/2 inch to make it work on this remodel. This cuts on just your standard chop saw that has a blade that's ready for wood. And then everything screws together, and then ultimately when the drywall guys come, you still use those same drywall screws. It all goes together really easily and straightforward. But now I've got a frame that's super rigid. Everything's super tight on the job site, and again, everything comes in the same box, which I like. The other big difference is this track that you see here is integrated into the aluminum header, and that is bearing weight onto these legs right here, which are screwed into the jamb side. So now I don't have to screw into the head. Now this one in particular is a bipart, so where these two come together, we do have a pre-drilled screw right in the center to hold that together. But had this been a standard single pocket door into an opening, we would have had a leg coming down made from the same material that would structurally support that. So now I don't have to screw into that header, which means if I get some settlement on the house, if I'm screwed into the header with a standard track, that means I might have some ghosting that happens later on. The door may be perfect the day the finish carpenter leaves, but a year later, as that header sags a little bit one way or another, either I've got a ghost opening door or I'm just really not perfectly level anymore, which can be a problem. That's one nice thing about this solution out of all aluminum that solves it for me. Hey, while we're talking about this system, let me actually bring the guy in who brought it over from New Zealand. This has been a company that's been around a long time. Hey, Laurie, thanks for coming out to the job site, brother.
Thanks for having me.
So, Laurie, I mentioned a couple things that I like about your system, but I've heard you say before there's 3 things that you think really separate your pockets from the competition. What is that?
So when we designed the system, we really took into account the problems that you know, our suppliers, our installers, the architects were having with pocket doors, and it came down to 3 things. 3 problems are a lack of structural integrity, a lack of smooth operation, and a lack of serviceability. And the combination of those just gave people for a long time just a general negative stigma towards the category you know, in its entirety. Yep. So what we did is we eliminated those problems. So obviously everything is constructed from extruded aluminum, so it's robust. It's just not going to move. Everything's held in place with these right angle brackets, so it will always be perfectly square. Smooth operation comes from the carriages. We test them through 1 million cycles.
And those are true ball bearing carriages.
They are, yep, they've got sealed ball bearings, and they've got large diameter wheels so that they run really smooth within the track. And then probably the most important thing is the serviceability.
I really like that about your system.
Yeah, and it's been designed with the realities of the job site in mind, and things don't always go to plan. Now, nobody ever wants to have to get back inside these pockets. We can't determine what's going to happen to the doors once they get installed. You know, moisture, heat, they can twist and warp, somebody could put a hole in them. So accessibility, serviceability is absolutely key, because nobody wants to be cutting holes in.
Yeah, you don't want to break into the pocket.
Exactly. So this trim is actually removable once you pop the casing off, and then you've actually got really simple access through the spring-loaded mount plate and a notch, so that you could, you know, drop the carriages out if they had some dust on them. So.
That's really nice. And that also allows me, Laurie, like in this case, to make a couple of test doors out of just some leftover plywood on the job. You know, these Advantech doors are pretty heavy, but that allows me to run these through construction, and then at the very end, after the painter has painted all the doors, that's one of the last things the finished carpenter is going to do, is install these final doors right before move-in.
Exactly, especially with a soft open function, it allows you to get your activator set in the back of the pocket, so that that's dialed before your drywall goes on. Dummy doors can be whatever you like, so.
I really like that.
Yeah, get creative.
Now this system, this is your Ultimate that comes in one box, like your other systems in one box. But what's new about this Ultimate system?
So what you'll see here is we've gone to a 2x6 stud. With these custom homes, often in, you know, luxury areas, we see a lot of that, especially, you know, in the mountain regions. And what it's allowed us to do is open this throat size up. Still got the key attributes, hallmark features of the standard cavity slider, but what we've got is a 4-inch throat size. So you could do a 2 1/4 inch thick door if you wanted.
All right, whereas 1 3/4 inch, maybe sometimes 1 3/8 is standard, this will go up to that 2 1/4 door if you need it.
Exactly.
Talk to me about weight though, because those 2 1/4 doors can get heavy.
They can. So with our M8 carriages, they go up to 500 pounds.
Ooh.
Yeah, so, and the size on this unit, we go up to a 5.0, 10.0 door size, so you really can go big.
That's serious. Now here we've got double 4.0, so I've got an 8.0 opening when these things are open, and these are 8 foot tall, but you could have gone double 5.0, 10.0. That's a serious door.
It is. And what we're seeing is now that people have confidence in pocket systems through, you know, a reliable system, is architects, designers, builders feeling comfortable again, not just using pocket doors out of necessity, where you simply can't use a swinging door because you don't have the room, but for the feature openings like this, where you can really give the value from an aesthetic or like a flow standpoint back to the project. So that didn't used to be the case, because, you know, you speak to a lot of builders that say, I try and, you know, sub pocket doors out of my projects because they've caused problems. That no longer needs to be the case.
Yeah, I like that. Talk to me about availability. You know, when I get your doors, Gilbert's the finished carpenter that I use on this project that I've used in the past.
Yep.
I remember the first time he installed one, took him maybe, you know, an hour, hour and a half, read the directions,
Yep.
make sure you understood it. These guys, now that they've done your system a couple times, you're kind of our gold standard.
Cool.
I mean, these two doors, if you look at the time lapse, it was probably only hour, hour and a half for 2 giant frames to be put together. How do we get a hold of these?
Yeah, so Gilbert, he's probably in that pocket door expert category these days.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Across the nation, we've got the key lumber yards and mill workshops supplying this unit. You can demand it from wherever you like, and we'll figure out how to supply it. We've got distribution across the US these days. Wasn't always the case, but
yeah, so cavityslider.com, you can find that out.
Cavitysliders.com.
Sliders, I'm sorry, with an S.
That's all.
One interesting side note that I would tell you, Laurie, I was in California last week at a Builder's First Source open house, a window and door showroom, and the salesman there said, I was asking him, hey, you guys selling much cavity slider? He told me a story I wanted to pass along to these guys. He said, you know, during the COVID issues, when supply chain was all messed up, a lot of builders that were using kind of standard or less expensive hardware, they couldn't get it, and you guys were in stock. And so even though you were quite a bit more expensive than the really basic systems, they sold the heck out of your systems because they were available. But he said what was interesting about that is those guys have stuck with it. And so now in California, he was seeing, you know, apartments and, you know, more downscale projects in terms of overall cost, more affordable projects using cavity slider when you really started as more of that custom builder like me kind of project where I can afford to spend a little bit more. And I realize, hey, I'm going to spend a half a day with a finish carpenter. There's a real value in me not spending $600 in labor to make a pocket. I'm going to put that into the frame. 100%. But he said now they're selling it to all these places that you wouldn't have expected. Was that a surprise to you too?
I'd like to put that down to skill, but it was probably more luck and timing. May 21, we went from 1 to 2 suppliers of our aluminum extrusions, and it just, you know, worked out perfectly. So while, you know, some alternatives were at, you know, 4 to 6 months, the worst that we got to was like 6 to 8 weeks. And as you said, you know, people aren't just going to leave a rough opening in the wall where a pocket door is supposed to be.
That's right.
So, and because these finished carpenters, you know, will run the full spectrum of the profile of jobs, from, you know, high-end luxury to, you know, sometimes affordable housing, people use what they can get their hands on. So we have seen that, you know, be a real catalyst for the use of the product.
I suspect finish carpenters are bringing your product to other builders and saying, hey, I used this on one of Matt's jobs. It was awesome. You should be using this, because frankly, I don't have the bandwidth to spend a day building 3 pocket doors for you.
We've seen that 100%. And one of the things is builders will listen to finished carpenters that demand the products that allow them to, you know, deliver, you know, their best work product. So, you know, everyone wants efficiency. You know, if you can feel confident that you can deliver what you want and be proud of it, make those demands as a finished carpenter.
That's pretty awesome. Let me add with the one last thing that I think really separates you, and that's that serviceability. The fact that I can take these jam and header components off, have full access to the door, repaint it if I had a problem in the future. That's a really big deal.
Yeah, agreed. Again, this company, 36 years ago out of New Zealand, was started by a builder that couldn't get his hands on a decent pocket frame. He made one and his mates said, Phil, that's a really nice pocket frame. And that mentality of designing with the realities of the job site in mind and what actually happens in terms of installation transcends throughout our product. So all of it's designed for service, but also the realities and you know, faux pas that can happen along the way.
That's pretty awesome. Guys, you can order this through Builders First Source, through your millwork supplier. If you want to go to their website, you can see a page that says, here's how you can find it. Here's the stocking dealers. But you know, there's still only a couple years in the States. They'd love to start stocking at your dealer if you're in the middle of you know, some small town in Texas or a small town in Kansas. Great people over at Cavity Sliders. Also great support. Laurie, thanks for coming in for the video. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
All right, guys, if you're not currently a subscriber, hit that subscribe button below. You know we've got new content here every Tuesday and every Friday. Follow us on TikTok or Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on The Build Show.